Hello there, and welcome to a another Irrational Passions review discussion of the Gunk on the Irrational Passions Presents feed. I'm your
Mhm.
host Quinn Hoffman, and joining me to talk about the Gunk
Mhm.
is Mike Burgess. Hi,
That's right.
Mike.
I've been cleaning up that gunk.
Yeah.
I'm not full. My can is full of gunk that I got to get rid of.
Okay.
After cleaning up this all of it up. The gunk. It's just a
The Gunk.
good name
It
for a
is a
video
very
game.
good.
First off.
Yeah, it's a very good name, and Gunk I think is maybe one of my favorite bits of like slang slash jargon.
Mhm.
Like because you don't know what it really means. It's like it's just gunk.
Yes.
It's is it junk? Is it like grout? Is it just like whatever that's clogged in your pipes?
Is
It's
it is
gunk.
it is it creepy alien goo that's all over a planet? You never know.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
in this case, in this video game, it is that,
mhm,
but
yeah.
it's a perfect
So yeah, you
nebulous
joined me
term.
today. It is very nebulous, which I do enjoy. So you joined me today to talk about the new 3D platformer from Image and Form slash Thunderful Games called The
Hmm.
Gunk.
The
Um,
gunk.
and so as I understand it, this is a very different departure from what they're normally doing. We'll have that conversation later. But
Hmm.
give me like the pitch on the Gunk.
The sales pitch. Yes, the gunk is an Xbox exclusive. It is on Game Pass. That's where I played it. I played it on my Xbox Series S. I think you can play it on the PC Game Pass as well. So it is on technically on PC, but it is all under Xbox. Like you
Mhm,
said, it is the first game from now the like four or not. I don't think it's their very first game. As now Thunderful, but in Image and Form, and I think Zoink like combined forces and became
mhm,
Thunderful. But I think their teams still like do their own thing. And I want to say this game is the first from Image and Form, who originally made like a lot of the Steam World Dig games. So we had Steam World Dig 1 and 2. They did like Steam World Heist, which was like a
mhm,
completely different thing. A lot of them were like 2D action games of different varieties. So you had like
yeah,
the Dig games were more like 2D side scrolling, more Metroidvania. Like 2 is definitely
mhm,
very much just a Metroidvania that was very good. Probably one of my favorite Metroidvanias in recent years. Heist I didn't play, which that was more like a tactical, like kind of 2D
yes.
game that looked interesting still. And then there was another one that was more like a medieval fantasy, like
SteamWorld Quest.
SteamWorld Quest. Yeah, which was also that one was interesting. But I think at the end of the day, I always liked those original Dig games the
Mhm,
most. And this game, yeah, like it is a departure because it is not set in the SteamWorld Dig world or universe. It is
mhm,
its own universe. At least that's what it seemed like to me. I
yeah,
didn't see any direct references to SteamWorld Dig as far as I could tell in this. And this is they're like a fully 3D platforming game. It's not a 2D game.
okay,
So it's like the first. It feels like I'm pretty sure it's the first time they've done something like this,
mhm,
and it feels like a first attempt at a thing.
okay,
Not in a bad way, but it definitely feels like they played it safe too, so they could figure out and learn the ropes of all this thing,
mhm,
and like keep the game at like a simple core rather than
yeah,
like try and overbloat it with a whole bunch of different things and try different stuff. It's just a simple, pretty linear by the books like platforming game where you play as this main character Ronnie. She has like a robotic arm that's also like a vacuum in one, and you basically are going around this. You have kind of not crash landed, but have discovered this planet that has this energy resource, and like you
mhm,
and your crew, who is there's only one other human character named Bex, and both of them are like kind of there just to find the energy source and kind of sell it and kind of make ends meet as like space junkers that they
yeah,
are before some big corporation comes and lays waste to the planet. That's kind of the initial premise, and you kind of land on the planet. You find the titular gunk and start
mhm,
sucking it up, and you find out when you suck up the gunk from these environments in the game, it like fully it's like a a moment where it kind of like materializes and everything turns green and lush and plants grow,
Oh.
all these things grow, and then there's all kinds. And as the game goes on, there's all kinds of puzzle related things of like, all right, I got to clean the gunk out of this area to
Mhm,
reveal some like platforms, or use different things in the environment to unlock platforms, or remove gunk from the area to keep progressing. But it's pretty
okay.
like it's pretty linear, I would say, for lack of a better term. Like there are like somewhat openish environments, but like the paths are pretty set of where you're going and
Mhm.
how you're exploring the world in this game.
Okay. This this is way different than what I thought this game would be on it, 'cause,
Yeah.
full disclosure, I don't know much about this game. So this is
Hmm.
really cool. So, you mentioned how you're kind of, like, cleaning these environments up.
Right.
You're undoing, the gunk.
Yes.
Um, and so how does that kind of mechanical, um, coursework
Yeah,
and,
so basically, yeah, you
engage
just
with? Yeah.
yeah, basically you know, as you're going through the environments,
Yeah.
there's either gunk on the ground, and it's like these like big red black blobs of
Mhm.
goo that are all over the environment. They're on walls. They're different parts of it. They're in these environments that you can kind of see it from different angles and things, and
Mhm.
like they're usually also like there's like a red hue around the areas that they're fully controlling.
Okay.
You just go in there, and it's kind of third person. You can hold down a trigger to aim her hand, or you can just freely like basically just hold down a trigger and she'll suction up
Okay.
everything. Um, there's other like once you like start sucking up the gunk and get further in, and like kind of releasing some areas of the gunk, you find like other like interactable things, like these little plants that you can pick up and throw, and some of them are
Yeah.
like bombs, some of them like create
Okay.
platforms or other things like that, and you can use the bombs to like also clear the gunk. So there's a lot of ones that, and some points that you like have to like get the bomb first, and then like
Mhm.
there's a platform way over here that has gunk on it. You can't necessarily get over there, so you throw it over there, and then when you clear that
Okay.
one, that like brings all the green and lush back in, and it'll make like plant platforms, or mushrooms will grow
Mhm.
out of the ground, and then you can jump across them and continue on.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff like that, but it's a lot of sucking up the gunk with your little vacuum arm hand.
Mhm.
There is a little bit of combat in the game, I'll
Yeah.
say. It's pretty basic too, because it's all again all you really have is that vacuum. There are some
Mhm.
upgrades that you can get it, like you can make it so it vacuums up larger areas,
Okay.
or like you can throw, or you get like a little decoy thing you can throw out, which will like distract enemies for a brief period, so you can suck them up still. But ultimately,
Mhm.
the end of combat is there's these little like gunk creatures. You suck them up with your vacuum, and which puts them in your hand, and then you can just chuck them. You can just throw them,
Okay.
and then they just when you after you throw them, they just like explode. Or you can throw it
Yeah.
into another enemy, and they'll take them out. Um,
Okay.
it's they're all pretty basic
Mhm.
combat encounters um, overall, because again, it's all about sucking. You're sucking all
Okay.
the time.
So, how does the suction, like, feel? Does it feel good? Like, obviously,
Hmm.
there's this element of, like, you cleaning up the environment, so you're kind of like there's this environmentalist twist where, like, feels good to do that, but how does the actual act of cleaning feel?
It's pretty
Like, does it
it's pretty standard, I would say, for like a
okay.
like a video game, because it's just third person over the shoulder. You
Mhm.
can just hold down the trigger, and she'll and like aim, and like walk her around, and she'll kind of grab it. But you can also hold
Yeah.
down and over the shoulder aim, and then you can kind of like freely kind of aim the
Okay.
suction and suck up gunk, because there's gunk. There's like again, it's like in these
It's everywhere,
environments,
yeah.
it can kind of be everywhere. It can be all over the ground. There can be big blobs. There's even like a little bit
Mhm.
later in the game, there's like actual like big floating ones that'll just like float around the environment. You'll have to kind of like chase them down. Um, but yeah, it's like a standard kind of third person control
Okay.
scheme.
Um, and did you have any issues with the combat besides it just being, like, super minimal?
No, not. I would not consider it hard. Um,
Okay.
because like it was pretty easy to get around. Like the really only like minor inconvenience were like there were some moments, because the other there's basically only three types of enemies in the game.
Mhm.
There's like these little like four-legged creatures that are really tiny, and you can suck them up and throw them. There's like basically like turret-looking gunk creatures where they will shoot a ball at you of gunk
Okay.
at you, and you can either suck that up and throw it back at them, which will stun them, or you can just like run up to them and just like suck their head and just like rip them off. Um,
Okay.
yeah, you know what I mean,
That's
sucking
some
them
Doom
off.
Eternal shit. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there is like one bigger enemy that's like you consider like the boss, which is like
Mhm.
this, but it's I would also consider that like a pretty typical like video game
Okay.
style boss of like it's just like this big horned like ram looking creature,
Mhm.
and it'll run around this environment, and you just have to lure it into like a big rock where it'll like run into that instead of you, which will stun it, and then you can attack its backside.
Mhm.
But that's kind of like the three types of enemies, and
Okay.
it's all pretty basic stuff. It was fine. Like I think it was,
Mhm.
again, the idea I think of this game is it was their kind of first look at I mean
Mhm.
I'm willing to overlook some of a few of the shortcomings of them, of some of the stuff being pretty basic, because it seems like their first attempt at making a
Mhm.
fully 3D game, and it felt like they were kind of playing it safe and just kind
Yeah.
of making sure they make a core thing that just is fun and not try
Mhm.
and overcomplicate it. So I
Yeah.
feel like they kept it pretty by the books.
Yeah, because I feel like this team's, greatest strength is not, like, combat and stuff. It's like
Hmm.
it's like it's cool, inventive takes on genres. So,
Yeah.
like, it's cool that,
Hmm.
like, with SteamWorld Dig, it's part Metroidvania, but it's also part Dig Dug.
Right.
And, like, s in SteamWorld Heist, because I actually played that game,
Nice. Okay.
it's kind of it's a weird take on a fantasy game in, like, a tactics game in space.
Yeah.
And then I think you played, SteamWorld Quest, and it's a weird take on a deck builder, but it works.
Yeah, because
So
it's like an
it's
RPG deck builder thing.
Mhm.
Before there was like 8 billion of those, I feel like.
Yeah. Um, so it's cool to see them try and be like, "Hey, dip our feet into a thing," because
Yeah.
that's what they've done. Well, they've
Hmm.
only besides SteamWorld Dig, they've only, like, made one game with a certain kind of feel before. I know they
Yeah.
just, there's a game with dice that they just this
Yeah,
team
I
wants to
think
release.
yeah, I
Um
think that's like the Zoink Games side of
Mhm.
Thunderful who did that,
Yeah.
if I'm remember correctly.
Yeah. It's 'cause I don't Thunderful is also like a publishing house, so it's kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
it's like its own kind of beast now that they kind
Mhm.
of formed a whole thing over there.
Okay. Um, but no, it's the more I hear about this game from you, the more I actually do wanna play it. Because this idea
Hmm.
of, like, while it is technically a take on The Stranger in the Strange Place, which I have its, like, issues with, I think the idea of how it handles itself is cool, of like, "Hey, there's, like, this parasite that took over, so you kind of have to
Yeah,
revert it back to its original form." And I
yeah.
think that's cool, um,
Hmm.
because
And it gets more into that stuff because, like, I guess, story spoilers ahead.
Mhm,
But I think like a lot of the thing is like, when you first land on the planet, it really is just about kind of like, all right, we're here to get in and get out, and
mhm,
find the energy, and then we're gonna keep doing our junker hauler thing and get out of here. But then like your character Ronnie, she's kind of she kind of starts seeing the gunk for herself, because she's the one actually like, you're playing as her, so you're
mm,
running exploring, where your other character Bex is like kind of back at this little hub that you return to pretty often, because you can like get upgrades and stuff in the
mhm,
game. So you do go back to that spot, and she's usually just there. And I like that. I appreciate that they kind of like in the story, like kind of talk about, like kind of reference that more directly, right? Of
mhm,
like, this character is always over here in this hub, and like is not seeing what you're seeing. So she's kind of like, you're kind of describing it to her, and she's just kind of like, "What? No, this sounds kind of crazy. I
mhm,
don't know about this. You shouldn't. I don't know if we should be getting involved in all this, because you." So, and I like, and I think they play with that dynamic well, of like, Bex, being this character who she's like kind of more there for like a specific goal, and
mhm,
Ronnie was also in with that goal. But then as you like start exploring this planet and kind of discover the secrets of like, oh, the gunk is actually this made by this thing that was there's an actual alien race that's on the planet
mhm,
that you start meeting later on, and you find one that's like hooked up into this machine that's like mining into the planet to get that energy resource that they're like trying to find. And then
Mhm.
you turn out that like the I guess like some kind of overseer, they refer to him as the gardener, basically put all of the aliens that he was
Mhm.
overseeing into these pods to like power all this stuff, and he's just kind of gone. And that's been going on for like years and years, and he's kind of gone mad and in this big like
Mhm.
tower that's like covered in gunk, and and basically you find out like the gunk is sort of just a manufactured like weird parasite goo
Mhm.
that's been covering all this planet because of all the machinery and all the stuff he's been doing to try and get all this power on the
Mhm.
planet. So you basically get wrapped up in that, like you save one of the aliens that's like in one of the machines, and he kind of tells you all that, and then you kind of go, then you kind of Ronnie ends up being like, hey, I want to help these people, like we need to
Mhm.
figure this out, like we can't just let this keep happening. And Beck's the whole time still just like, this is not, I don't like any of this. This has
Mhm.
gotten real. This is dangerous. I don't know about this. So there's a push and pull between those two characters, which I think works really well. But there's also kind of like this other cool sci-fi kind of alien
Mhm.
story, which I always like. That I always am a sucker for like cool little sci-fi stories and unique sci-fi worlds,
Mhm.
which I think they do a good job of kind of balancing here.
Yeah, and I think, again, that is one of the strengths of this team, of is making really cool, like, taking really cool, like, conceptual stories and being like,
Hmm.
"Okay, what can we do with this?"
Yeah,
Because like, if you like the lore and stuff, I'm sure the lore of this game's fucking fascinating, but, like, the lore of the SteamWorld games, each one is kind of, like, really cool,
yeah,
and
totally.
it's like, "Oh, okay," then you can kinda get into it more because it's like, the world is super interesting, and you wanna know
Yeah,
more about it.
yeah, and
Um
that's definitely was a pull for me for this game of like once it started getting more into like, oh, I'm like in these weird alien like ruined structures like cleaning up the gunk instead of like kind of these
Mhm.
foresty areas. It was cool like kind of like finding these like overgrown kind of ruins of this civilization, and then
Mhm.
you get to like uncover more and more of this the world that they're inhabiting, which is cool. I think they do a good job of that. There's a lot of cool like one other aspect of gameplay is you have like a little scanner. It's very Metroid Prime esque if you're kind of familiar
Mhm.
with how that scanning stuff works, where you can scan an object and like if you
Yeah.
aim in a direction, you can see like it'll give you like a little icon over a thing, and then you can scan it and it'll give you like extra
Okay.
details of like, oh, you can scan the plant life and it'll tell you about the plant life, or you can like, or these like tablets are on the wall and they'll like tell you about these alien ruins or
Mhm.
whatever. There's stuff like that too in the game, and that's actually how you unlock upgrades in the game. Is like
Okay.
for the arm is like once you scan a certain amount of things, you have like a little progress or essentially like an XP bar, and like once that
Mhm.
fills up, you'll get another upgrade. You can go purchase for your sucking hand.
Yeah. Your second
Yeah,
hand.
your gunk sunken
Um
hand.
that's a good, like a swapper for, like, an expletive. Your gunks in hand.
That's right.
That's very good, I love that.
Hmm.
Um, so the one thing we haven't really touched on yet, Mike, is the level design. So you said it's not an open technically like an open world 3D
Hmm.
platformer. It's more just levels, and then there's the occasional semi-open, um,
Yeah, yeah.
it
You kind of it's I
yeah,
would say
open levels, what I
I would
like to
consider,
call 'em.
yeah, open levels. Like I would consider it more
Mhm.
linear than anything. And
Yeah.
not to say it's like a bad thing necessarily, but it's
Mhm.
just you have kind of your directions you can go when you get into a map. You kind of have the directions you can go, and that's kind of it.
Mhm.
Like some of the areas are larger than others, and some of them are also much smaller than others because you have like you go in some parts where it's like you're in an underground kind of mining cavern area, and
Mhm.
there's platforms that are very tight that you have to kind of jump around, and there's a lot of like walls and rocks and underground coverage everywhere. But then there's like big kind of foresty areas.
Mhm.
There's these kind of ancient like ruined alien kind of civilization areas you go to later in the game, which are cool. And yeah, like they're pretty standard. Like I don't think they're not like massive
Mhm.
areas by any means. Like they're pretty small, small platforming sections, and usually it's like a thing where it's like, all right, I go into a room, I go into this area, and now I have to like either uncover like this puzzle that's like buried in the gunk, or
Mhm.
there's just already like doors or things and pretty standard video gamey type stuff of like, oh, there's a switch up here, and then I have to use
Yeah.
my like vacuum hand to like shoot air into this little turbine looking thing, and that moves platforms to like so I can jump across. Or
Mhm.
I have like the little bomb like kind of like fruits or like little plants you can grab, and I have to use those to like either clear gunk out of areas, or I have like other plants that you throw into these like little green pools of water, and that'll like make mushrooms grow out that'll also make
Mhm.
platforms that you can go into different areas. So it's a lot of you do a lot of like similar stuff in the
Mhm.
areas, but but this game, but I also say it's not like a super long game, so I didn't feel like it
Yeah.
was getting. It definitely felt like it was like I got to the point towards the end where it's like, all right, this is a good stopping point because I've already done a
Mhm.
lot of like I've already seen kind of a lot of the mechanics you've thrown at me
Yeah.
early on in the game, and they're not really being elaborated on that dramatically. It really is just like, all right, this area I'm in is a little bit more dynamic, I guess is the
Mhm.
term for it, where it's a lot more vertical or different styles of platforms. Maybe they're a little bit trickier to get around because there's like larger chasms, or I have to like time a platform to like move in a
Mhm.
direction to like clear a thing. But like, yeah, by the end of it, I think they definitely used up a lot of the stuff they had, the ideas they had for like the puzzle mechanics in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like there's nothing truly derivative of, like, once you first start going and like, "Okay, I can see," then, like, having them stay the same is fine, I think, in a puzzle game,
Yeah.
but I've, like if I didn't know this was a puzzle game, I'd be fine with that because it sounds like it's just a game about cleaning out the gunk,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
that's kind of my ultimate feeling on it. Really, is like,
Mhm.
even though I would consider some of the stuff in like some other aspects like shortcomings, the fact that
Mhm.
like this is their first kind of attempt at making like a fully 3D game
Yeah.
from the Steam World team, and I know like Steam World Dig 2 is probably still one of my like favorite recent Metroidvanias. It's an incredible game. So
Yeah.
I know they know their stuff and how to make a good video
Mhm.
game. This ultimately feels like them like dipping their toes into making like a more open, like a fully 3D
Yeah.
game to like like action platforming game to get around in. And they didn't, it felt like they had the right idea going in of like they didn't try and like overload it with like here's a
Mhm.
million different kinds of mechanics or puzzles or this or that. Like, let's just make something pretty simple that's like pretty straightforward and just like fun and simple mechanics that are just the things themselves, like just sucking up gunk and walking around sucking up
Mhm.
gunk. It's just like a fun, cathartic,
Yeah.
satisfying thing to do. Like in the same way that like it's not as one to one, but like Mario Sunshine, sometimes there's just some times where it's
Yeah.
like I'm just walking around and just shooting water at stuff, and it's
Mhm.
cleaning out, and it's nice. So it's like a similar feeling and concept to that of just I'm just walking around, I'm sucking this all up, and then when I
Mhm.
suck it all up, you get this cool little explosion from your character, and it just shows all the stuff growing around you. The grass all turns green. You get like all these mushrooms sprouting out of the ground, and
Mhm.
trees, and like different plants and flora, and it's cool.
Yeah. And it's this seems like a great post-work game
Yeah,
of, "Cool, I had a really shitty day at work. I'm gonna sit down and clean up this environment and just, like, enjoy the simpleness of cleaning out, like, cleaning up."
yeah,
Um,
and yeah,
and that's and that
it's pretty. Like I think it's again, I think it was also smart of them to just throw it like as a game to have on Game Pass, because like
Mhm.
I again I don't think it's like a super long game. I didn't count my exact hours, but like I beat it in a weekend. I beat it in a weekend, start to
Yeah.
finish. I would say maybe like 6 hours, 7 hours
That's
if I
not
had to
bad.
guess. And that's like there's probably still some other collectible type things I could probably go find in there
Mhm.
too if I wanted to. But it's pretty straightforward too. Like you're not, I did not feel like I did not get to points in that game where I felt like lost, just because
Mhm.
it's and not to say it didn't help. It's like holding your hand with with like the linearity of the environments and the levels, but it is a thing where it's just
Mhm,
like I can kind of you walk into an environment, it's like okay, I can see the paths I can take. I can go that
mhm,
left path and that'll go somewhere, or I can go this path and that'll go somewhere, or this is
yeah,
the, or clearly I can go these directions and that path is the path. I have to like do the puzzle to unlock and get to the next area,
mhm.
kind of thing. Like it was a lot of areas like that.
Okay. Um, and so I do think it's worth talking about. We've we've mentioned it before, like we've peppered it in throughout this conversation, but this is this team's first non 2D game.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that is such a big jump financially, game wise, everything. It is
Hmm.
a it's a much bigger undertaking. Um, and I think you've said like I come from what you say, it sounds like they're just like playing it very safe and playing having their
Hmm.
cards close to their chest. And I think that's a good thing to do with your first like dipping your toes into a genre
Yeah.
of 3D platformers because there it's a big one.
Yeah.
It's like
Totally.
3D open world games are the shit right now and everyone's making
Hmm.
them.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to just like kind of have a more conservative approach to it because you don't want to overblow your budget and like kind of you know what I mean? It's a smart move, I think, by them to do
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. It feels like, or at least that maybe this is my guessing. Because if you go back and play, I remember playing the original Steam World Dig
Mhm.
when originally it just came out on 3DS and it was only on 3DS. I think I'm pretty sure by now it's on a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm more unsure of that, but I remember playing that game and being like feeling similarly then to like what
Mhm.
I'm playing this game now. Of being like, this is like a fun. It has like a lot of, it has some okay ideas, but it's just like at the end of the day, it's just like a core
Mhm.
like gameplay loop that is just like fun to do,
Yeah.
and that like that's all they really. As long as you nail something like that, then you know the rest of the game can kind of be its own thing. And
Mhm.
I feel like once they moved on to, I think they did one of the other SteamWorld games in between that before they did SteamWorld Dig 2.
Did they?
They might have. I don't. That's where I'm like blurry on the timeline. But I was gonna say ultimately, once they did SteamWorld Dig 2 and they fully did the idea of like this is a full blown Metroidvania game, like here it is and here it is, and like and being see what they did with that and how well they knocked that game out of the park, and still like a super fun Metroidvania game. I think it's the Gunk feels like maybe their attempt, like a SteamWorld Dig to
Mhm.
the Gunk feels like maybe like this is them just trying this out for the first time as a 3D thing, and then whatever they do next will probably also be a big 3D game, and that'll be like when they
Mhm.
really try and expand and blow out into like a larger idea. And that might be the reason why they did something like the Gunk and didn't do like a
Yeah.
Steam World game necessarily.
Mhm. So with my one good arm, I was like, I want to find what this SteamWorld 1.5 game is. There's no SteamWorld Dig 1.5, but there is SteamWorld Tower Defense, which is their first game.
Okay,
Um,
gotcha.
but no, yeah, and it's SteamWorld Dig 1, I think, is still one of the coolest games conceptually to play
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, it's not Minecraft, it's Dig Dug, but it's a Metroidvania.
Yeah.
And it's like, yo, like
Mm-hmm.
who in the year 2013 was like, you know what? Dig Dug. Let's bring it
Yeah.
back.
Bring it back
And,
with
and
some
that's
ideas.
cool. And
Mm-hmm.
it's cool that like that's the one thing I love about this team is like doing cool takes on genres that are established.
Yeah.
Because by the time you're like 1 hour into the SteamWorld Dig games, you're like, oh, this is a Metroidvania.
Mm-hmm.
Or like playing, SteamWorld Ice is like, "Oh, this is very much like a very tight and engaging tactics game." I never beat it because it got way too fucking difficult way too quick. But even like SteamWorld Quest, where it's like a cool take on this, like, flowering card, like, deck builder RPG era that we find ourselves in. That was in 2019, and that was like
Mm-hmm.
they were kind of, like, on the forefront with that, and it's cool that this team is still making cool, inventive takes on genres
Yeah.
that like no one's really thinking about right now. So,
Hmm.
good to know.
Yeah, I'm excited to see them. Yeah, keep dipping their toes and taking a dive at and attempts at like bigger games, because I
Mhm.
think that team has a lot of awesome ideas and approaches to like making games and designing them. So I'm
Mhm.
excited to see what a full fledged like 3D platforming game, like a
Looks
more
like.
open, or like you said, like a fully open world kind of platforming thing,
Mm.
or something else looks like. But yeah, I think that's mostly what I had to say about the Gunk. I
Okay.
definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
It's a fun game. I think it's a great game to just like hop on Game
Mhm.
Pass and just like chip away at, or just you could play that in a weekend like I did and like
Yeah.
have a good time. That's
Yeah, because I know I downloaded it before this. I downloaded this in Lake because they're on Game Pass. I'm like, hell yeah.
yeah.
But no, I think is a great stopping point. Thank you, Mike, for joining me, and we
Yes,
talked about the mother gunk and
we
gunk.
gunked it.
We gunked
Uh
it up.
yeah,
Uh,
we cleaned our pipes of the
we
gunk,
did clean our
or
pipes. But
as
no,
that
thank you for
works.
joining me.
Yes, thank
Um,
you.
I've been your host, Quinn Hoffman, and that has been Mike Burgess. And
All
this
right.
is our official goodbye.
See you next
Goodbye.
time. Bye.